Good morning, Browick School. What are you going to do today? Learn, enjoy, succeed. It's assembly time. We're recording this for Tuesday, the 12th of May. Going to do an assembly all about current affairs and find out what has been going on in the world in the last week or so. So I thought we would start with a little recap because, of course, we've been in lockdown for a little while. So why have we been in lockdown? Do you know what this is a picture of? You might have seen lots of pictures like this, particularly if you've been watching the news and things like that. So this is a picture of the coronavirus and a particular type of coronavirus called COVID19. And this can be floating around in some of the air, but you would only be able to see it if you looked under a microscope, and it was made thousands, maybe even millions of times bigger. So if you look in the air, you would never see anything like that. But if you used a special machine called a microscope and looked underneath, then they would be able to see the particles of things floating in the air like that. And this coronavirus that has been around recently has been making people a little bit poorly. So when I come to visit, there he is on the aeroplane. Look, the little atom or particle of coronavirus. I bring difficulty breathing. So some of the people who've got coronavirus find it hard to breathe. Fever, so sometimes it makes people really hot. And a cough, so sometimes it gives people a really nasty cough. And unfortunately at the moment coronavirus is making people really quite poorly, and some people who catch it get so poorly that they have to go to hospital. And so because of that, they have asked us to stay apart from each other to stop the germs from spreading. The best way of making sure that more people stay well and not so many people get sick is to try to keep apart from each other. So there's a good drawing of this here. Look, these people have drawn a circle around each other. So this is like our 2 meters or our 2 jumpers distance that we've been keeping. And you can see all these particles of coronavirus floating in the air, but they stay away from each other. They can't get to the other person if they're keeping apart. And so because we've had to keep apart, lots and lots of things have been shut. And one of the things that's been shut has been schools. We've also shut parks and lots of shops and all of the restaurants and cafes and things like that. And what we've been wondering about recently is how much longer this is going to go on, because when it was announced that we were going into lockdown, they announced it 3 weeks at a time, and the 3 weeks has just been up, so a new announcement was made, and we were interested to find out if there was any information about when we might come back to school. So who is it that makes the decision about when we can come back to school? It's not me. I don't get to decide when you come back to school, and it's not my boss who gets to decide. It's this man here. Do you know who he is? That is Boris Johnson. He is the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, and he doesn't make a decision by himself. He has a whole team of advisors and other people who help him to make a decision about what the right thing to do is to keep everybody safe and well and healthy. So how has he been making his decision with his team about when schools can reopen? Well, they have decided that there are some certain things that should be in place before it's safe to come back to school. So they need to make sure, firstly, that less people are getting poorly. Secondly, that the NHS can help everybody, so that if you do get sick, there'll be enough doctors and nurses to look after everybody that needs it. And lastly, that they can make it safe. So they can only lift the lockdown and think about sending the children back to school when all of these things have all happened at the same time. That not so many people are getting poorly and catching coronavirus, that there's enough doctors and nurses to be able to look after everybody, and that it's definitely safe enough. So what they announced yesterday on Sunday was a special way of working this out, and they're calling it COVID. This is COVID-19, the type of coronavirus that we're looking at, COVID alert levels. And you can see that it's like a traffic light system, which we're really used to from school, aren't we? We use a red, amber, green system when we're marking your work, and lots of people use it because it's a good way of measuring things. So on their COVID alert levels, they have got 5 different levels. So the best one, the safest one, is the green one, because green is for go, isn't it, and for good. And so that would be level 1, and that is that nobody in England has got COVID-19 or coronavirus anymore. So obviously what we're hoping to do is get all the way down to 1. But there's a scale 2, 3, 4 and 5. So red is always the worst one, or the danger, isn't it? And this one says there is a risk of overwhelming the NHS. So that means that so many people are poorly that they can't look after everybody. This is what they tried to avoid happening by imposing lockdown. And you know what? They did it. The NHS never got overwhelmed. There were never so many people poorly who they couldn't look after them or help them all. So that's a really good thing. So what Boris Johnson said on Sunday was that we are at the moment at a level 4, and we're moving down into a level 3. And that what we need to do is we need to keep making sure we're doing everything we can to bring these numbers down and down and down and down until eventually we get down to number 1. That's what we're aiming for. And they think that somewhere between a low 4 and a 3, they might be able to start thinking about some children coming back to school, but it won't be all of the children, and it won't be all of the children all of the time. So we've got a long way to go yet, and actually the numbers can go up as well as down. So at the moment, Boris Johnson is saying we're just about there, just hopefully coming out of a level 4. But if more people start to get poorly, unfortunately, that might creep up. So even if they're saying that we might be able to go back to school, we'd be able to go back to school on a 3 or maybe a 2. Even if we thought we might be okay to go back to school, if that number starts rising again, they might have to change their minds. So we're going to be seeing how we move up and down this scale, but this is going to take weeks and months really to get this right. It's going to take quite a long time. So with that in mind, I think that we need to start thinking about not resisting change, but embracing it. And you might have heard people talking about a new kind of normal. So what we mean by that is, because it's going to take a really long time to get that level all the way down into the green, then lots of the things that have started to happen will still remain in place for probably quite a long time yet. It's probably going to be a long, long time before you can meet up together with friends and families in big groups. It's probably quite a long time before you can have lots of people in your house and have parties all together. Probably be quite a long time where you still have to keep a good distance, a safe distance away from people if you're at the supermarket or out and about if it's people that you don't normally come into contact with. So I think the important thing really is that we just realise that that's what things have got to be like for now, and it's okay, it's nothing to worry about. In fact, it's a good thing, because every time you see people keeping their distance or keeping away from each other, every time you see people wearing masks on their faces, then all of those things are just being done to keep everybody safe. So those are a really good thing, and it's nothing to worry about at all. And actually with our learning, we're getting so good at home learning, which is excellent, because we need to realise that actually that's probably going to go on in some form for a long time yet. Some of you might be able to come to school some of the time, maybe before the school summer holidays, but at least some of your learning is going to carry on happening at home for really quite a long time yet. So this is what your life looks like now a little bit. The whole world is still out there, I promise you of that. Everything that was there before is still there, but you just need to access it in a slightly different way. I'm hoping that you've started Zoom calls with your classes, but also finding ways of interacting and socialising with your family and friends on the computer, and lots of screen time, that you found new ways of engaging with learning and with clubs and with hobbies and interests that you can do from inside of your house. So everything is still there, it just is a different way of looking at it and finding out about it to what we did before, that's all. All right, so I would like you to look out for a survey coming home from me this week. I've very carefully written some questions that would help us as a school to work out what we think is working really, really well for the children and the families at Braywick Court School while they can't be in school in the way that we used to be in school every day, and what we could do to make it better. So there are some questions on the survey that are for you, and there are some questions that are for your parents, and some of them you might be able to do together and some of them you might need to do separately, because we would like to find out what everybody thinks about learning at home, what's going really well, and whether there's anything at all about school or anything else in your lives that we might be able to help you with, because that's our job, isn't it? To look after everybody, make sure you're doing the best learning that you can, but also that you are as safe and happy as you can. So please spend a few minutes with your family having a look at our survey, because we'll be able to look at all of the information that comes back in, and that will help us make lots of important decisions about what happens next, to make sure that we're really supporting you and getting this right for you. Okay, so we called this assembly Current Affairs, and we've got a few minutes left before I've talked for too long, and I thought that you might like to have a look at the Week magazine, because we really enjoy that, don't we? This is the most recent one. It's the 2nd of May. So they deliver these once a week, but because it was Bank Holiday Friday, then this week's hasn't arrived yet. But there's still some really good articles in it that are still current and not too out of date. So it's a really good way of finding out what's going on in the world. So let's have a look. I thought this article was interesting because we've been learning about Ramadan as well, haven't we? So Muslims observe Ramadan online. The Islamic holy month of Ramadan began on the 23rd of April. Ramadan marks when the words of the Quran, the Islamic holy book, were first revealed to the Prophet Muhammad, the founder of Islam. This year, Muslims have had to adjust their plans because of the coronavirus outbreak. During Ramadan, all Muslims who are able to do so take part in a fast, which means that they don't eat during daylight hours. So that's a lot of hours every day. And I know that some of our children have been doing a really good job of joining in with the fast this year. I know that Hannah and Lukman have done it. I know that Zaina and Musa have done it. And I know that Dania and Zach have been trying it as well. So well done to all of you. I really am in awe of you, because I think that's a really difficult thing to do. They do this to bring them closer to Allah, to their God, and to remember those who are less fortunate. They have a meal before dawn called suhoor, I hope I've said that right, and another after sunset called iftar. It is normal for family and friends to come together for iftar and go to mosques together for prayer. However, because of coronavirus, mosques around the world are holding worship services and ceremonies online instead. That's a good idea, isn't it? Just like our school's gone online. In the UK, an 8-year-old from Bradford called Yahya Murad Hussain decided to build his own mosque at home using cardboard and sweet wrappers. Yahya says, "I want it to be a special area and a peaceful place in the house. It is magical and it makes me feel happy when I go there." Isn't that fab? He's done a great job there, and we really enjoyed the assembly from Hannah and Lukman, didn't we, when we found out about how they celebrate Ramadan in their house too. And I thought I would read this one to you about Finland. Can you see it on the map? Look, let me see if I can multitask and point to it. There we go. So, Finland. Finns are the world's best gamers. Let's see if you agree with this. Gamers in Finland are the best in the world, according to new research. Canada came second and Sweden was in 3rd place. The research also looked at which countries did better in certain types of games. Scotland was ranked top in driving games and Norway was best at sports. Among the world's favourite games, Ireland was best at Super Mario and Japan topped the rankings at playing Animal Crossing. Well, I wonder what England would be good at. I bet some of you would have a few ideas about that. Let's see what else has been going on. So we like the big debate, don't we? And we often read this one and have a chat about it at school. So this week's was a really good one. Should the current football season be scrapped? This is very up to date. So it says, with matches suspended, it's unclear how the 2019-20 season can continue. What you need to know. On the 13th of March, all professional football games in the UK were suspended because of the coronavirus outbreak. A football season is the period of time that the sport is played, during which teams compete against each other in an attempt to finish top of their league. In Scotland, all divisions below the Scottish Premiership were concluded on the 15th of April, even though some matches had not been played. The team that had the highest average number of points from the games that did take place were crowned the champions. Now, do you think that's a good idea? I wonder. Elsewhere in the UK, it is less clear how, if and when other leagues will finish. Now, I think they might say something about that this week when they make their announcement, so we'll find out whether we agree with them maybe. Since mid-March, professional football matches have been suspended because of the coronavirus outbreak. This has disappointed many fans in the short term, but there could be a longer-lasting impact of the suspension too. That's because governing bodies such as UEFA, responsible for European clubs, now have to decide whether to keep the suspensions in place or just end this year's tournaments early. If the season ends early, the winners may be decided based on teams' past performance. It has also been suggested that the season could continue at a later date, but this would have a knock-on effect on next year's season and other tournaments. One suggestion is to scrap the 2019-20 season entirely, but do you think that's the right solution? Yes, it's only fair to scrap the season, so it's going to give you two different points of view. Look, the best solution is to scrap this season and start a new season in August as normal. This is the only way to guarantee a fair result for all the teams involved. Winning or losing a league goes beyond lifting a trophy. The winners receive a big cash prize and are also promoted to a higher division if they are below the Premier League. The losers drop down a division, which means they have less cash to spend on players and staff. As this is such a big decision, it's not fair to choose who wins and loses based on an incomplete season. It would be better to start afresh with all clubs staying where they are. Besides, it would be a hollow victory for the winning clubs because people will think they didn't deserve to win. What about the other point of view? No, it's best to decide a winner. Scrapping the season completely will erase the effort of players who did their best to score as many points as they could in the matches they played, not to mention the hard work of behind-the-scenes staff and officials. The best solution would be to choose a winner and a loser based on the matches that went ahead. This approach has been used in some Scottish divisions, so it would seem sensible for all other UK leagues to do the same thing, keeping the system fair for all. Ending the season in this way also allows prize money to be released to clubs, many of which have struggled financially during lockdown. Another good point. This solution would allow all football clubs to survive in the future so they can battle it out in future seasons. So now they ask you to decide, what do you think? 3 reasons why the current season should be scrapped. Winning or losing a league has a huge impact on a club. It's not fair for this decision to be based on the results of an incomplete season. Number 2, it will be a hollow victory for teams and their fans if they are crowned champions with some matches unplayed. Number 3, there is no fair way to calculate the winner, so the only option is to scrap the season entirely. Now, this is a really tough decision, particularly tough this week, I think. But what we try to do, don't we, is decide which side you're on, and then we'll have a look next week and find out what the last week's poll said. Because last week, look, they were talking about whether fast food restaurants should stick to serving meat, and that was really close. So I wonder whether it's going to be the same this week. So those are your 3 reasons why you might think that the current season should be scrapped. Here are 3 reasons on the opposite point of view. No, 3 reasons why the current season should not be scrapped. Have a listen and then make your choice. Number 1, players worked hard to get as many points as possible before the suspension began. If the season is scrapped, this will go unrewarded. Number 2, Crowning a winner based on past performance is fair and has already been used in some Scottish tournaments. Number 3, if the season is scrapped, teams won't get their well-deserved and much-needed cash prizes. So what do you think? You could email in your answer and then your vote would be counted, ready for next week, or you could just have a little think about it yourself at home. So what do you think the answer should be? And actually, I think we might find out in the next week or so what they actually decide to do. So that'll be interesting. I'm not going to read that article, but that's about a top English teacher who's uploading her lessons onto YouTube and getting loads of views. Well, when I read that, I thought, well, that's because they haven't seen all my wonderful Brawick Court teachers. Otherwise, they would be in the newspaper as well, I think. I'm just going to do one more because we haven't got loads more time. But look, can you see all these other bits? I bet you'd love to read all these, you see. So Mrs. Nash gets one of these delivered to school and I get one at my house. Perhaps you'd like to think about whether you'd like one at your house too. I wanted to read this one to you because I really liked this. Entertainment news. Books take off during lockdown. Almost 1 in 3 people in the UK are reading more books during the coronavirus outbreak than they normally would, a new survey suggests. Those who took part in the study said that books had helped to distract them from what is happening and escape to other worlds. Nearly half of the youngest age group for the study, aged 18 to 24, said they were reading more now than they had ever done before. More than 2,000 people took part in the research, which was released for World Book Night on the 23rd of April. This is an annual event designed to encourage people to read more. The study found that people preferred to read fictional novels, made-up stories, especially crime novels, I love crime stories, that are considered classics. There were also a rise in the number of people reading books about fictional diseases. That's interesting, isn't it? And I bet there's been a rise in people watching films about those too, certainly amongst adults. So there we go. That is some of the news of this week, specially for children. There's loads more other fascinating things in here too. I wish we had more time. Have an amazing day. Enjoy the rest of your learning, and I'll see you again tomorrow.